So we talked about speed and volumes. Thanks to Magento, I was able to pull two statistics that I really enjoyed that I wanted to share with the audience here today, that kind of blew my mind. So I just, again, relying on Brent's intelligence and experience to kind of frame this conversation. But one I thought that was really interesting, 40% of people abandon websites that take more than 3 seconds to load. Again, like in my head that seems so tough because maybe you're in a place where connectivity isn't great, or you're just trying to shop or buy something. I know if I was buying something, maybe I'd wait that for a second, but certainly not something we're observing in the market. And then when you think about, like, everyone kind of follows Amazon into how they tend to operate. Walmart Plus, right, is kind of a big offering where they're kind of echoing that. Both of those companies are also putting an import on just speed and seconds saved, right? So a 10% increase in revenue for every second they shave from their load time. So you kind of see this interesting kismet of, like, if you can keep customers on, keep that load time low, you directly convert that to revenue.
Yeah, and I saw another statistic that every 100 milliseconds well, this is from Amazon, but every 100 milliseconds slowdown in the cart causes a 1% drop in sales.
Whoa.
I mean, that's a really small
Yeah.
amount, but if you think about the volume that Amazon is doing, that statistic becomes suddenly very, very relevant.
Yeah, absolutely. I know a lot of times I would think about that, or you would have conversations around that with, like, fields you might include, and, like, hey, if you have to add an extra point of, well, friction, depending on how you elect to look at it, like something that a customer has to actively input, you would see similar drop-offs in checkouts. So it's interesting to map that back to, like, a millisecond kind of measure, but it makes sense. Next, so again, I talked about, like, my experience in the fraud prevention space. Anytime I hear, like, instant settlement, like, check out now, my, like, kind of hairs on the back of my neck stand up, because a lot of times I think about, hey, I'm actually removing the time that I normally would have had to make an assessment of a particular order, and or user, depending on what you're reviewing at the time. So, I think a good question a lot of people have is, well, if speed wins, we have to do this to make more revenue for our company. How do we counterbalance this against, doing our due diligence and actually making sure that we're preventing fraud from happening on our platform? Brent, I know you had shared an anecdote with me about, someone in your travels that would actually call customers quite regularly. Could you share with us there?
Yeah, especially in the emerging markets, when it's not, when maybe well, their buyers aren't as sophisticated, but there's a lot more opportunities for fraud. Um, and maybe there's not a service that's available like SIFT, or there wasn't at the time. They would physically call almost every order unless they know the client. They would have a call center of, say, 20 or 30 people, and they would make sure that that's a good order. So if you imagine that, if you make that over and a lot of people, at some point it becomes impossible.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's one of those things too, in managing a team that, like, had to make calls. You start to, again, talking about seconds. When you think about call times, having to explain why you're calling, customers often have questions like, is my order still processing? What's going on? How do I know you're actually from this company? And those conversations tend to always increase in time longer than probably what you would want. And again, to your point, Brent, exactly, like, if you say, let's budget 3 minutes a call, just that's just, very back of the envelope math times a million calls. It's like, how do we come up with 3 million, minutes worth of, call coverage? Like, I don't know if you do. So it becomes, like, a very tough problem to solve very quickly, depending on your volumes and how you're setting up your call structure.
Yeah, and I think one small point that that SIFT has a great win on that is that if you know your customer and they've logged in, you assume that they're a good customer. But I think some of the things that you help with is if that behavior is outside of what the normal behavior is. So if they're logging in from Eastern Europe and they're a client out of, California, maybe we know this customer, but maybe this customer has been compromised and we should flag that order for some reason.
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll have some more slides on that. Thank you, Brent. I'll keep progressing.